first, along the lines of the land acknowledgement, I'd like to just offer a brief labor acknowledgement and acknowledgement of the Black and African indigenous ancestors who gave their lives for us to be here, who created the infrastructure of this nation, and also to acknowledge that slavery did happen here in California as well. Um, yeah, so that's part of our legacy, and it's really important to acknowledge that, even though the UC doesn't, and most people fail to and forget to. Okay, so People's Park. I wish I had been here when y'all were watching these grants, but I guess I'll accept that you saw it. This is Ohlone land, also along the lines of our land acknowledgement. In 1862, President Abraham Lincoln approved the Morrill Act. The same year, he conducted the largest mass execution of Native people in the U.S., the Dakota 38. California stole 150,000 acres of land and established the University of California. In 1868, in the 1920s, so 100 years ago, UC Berkeley destroyed the waterfall, which is located at Memorial Stadium. So that cliff where Memorial Stadium is now used to be a waterfall and gathering place for the Ohlone people. Now it's a football stadium. This rerouted Strawberry Creek, which had previously run through the land that's actually not correct. It still runs through this university, but it had to be undammed over several different projects. And it still remains to be decolonized and liberated, obviously. In 1954, UC Berkeley, in conjunction with the City of Berkeley, used eminent domain, this is getting to the People's Park, to steal and bulldoze 24 homes, including those of UC Berkeley students and professors. Okay, the vice president of the Oakland Tribune was the driving force behind the demolition of the block, which he believed was a hotbed of radical activities. I really hope, and if not, I'm gonna have to take the time to, this is the block, and these are some of the houses that were destroyed. Was it possible to add this slide, or can I like airdrop it to this MacBook Pro?
I think I added it in there.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's really important. Okay, so this is like, yeah, where People's Park, you can see the land here and the houses that were around that got bulldozed. So it's never been about housing. Yay, okay, so I just put this together today. Forgive its like rudimentary nature. However, I just wanted to highlight, as I've been trying to highlight with the press who never publishes this, that the park came to be as a site and also symbol and place for solidarity with the civil rights movement, also with the Palestine liberation struggle, which I think that'll be in the other slides. But just going back, the park was founded in 1969, which we'll see, but in 1964, there was a park gathering in San Francisco, which successfully protected Golden Gate Park from being bulldozed to create a freeway. In 1966, there was a park occupation on Alameda of black tenants who were trying to protect their homes, to which they did somewhat successfully, although they were actually a lot of people were eventually displaced. There was a lot of police brutality that was going on in the 1960s, and it's really no different than the same police brutality that galvanized people in 2020 that we still witness today. I think it's important to highlight that what we know now as the quote-unquote Black Lives Matter movement was the same movement that was going on then, which is to stop police taking lives extrajudicially or at all. And also that the UC has been part of disrupting that history and trying to erase the continuity of it. Also things like the LA quote-unquote riots, the LA uprisings, would be also along the same continuum of stop killing us. I'll probably just have to come back to this because, like I said, I did that slide kind of last minute, kind of weaves throughout here. So after a year that the lot was bulldozed and it was sitting vacant, in 1969, People's Park was born. Okay, so on April 20th.
So if we could just go back here, in April 1967, Denzel Dowell, 22, was killed by Contra Costa police in Richmond. In April 1968, MLK was assassinated. There were huge rallies and active actions taking place in the Bay Area in solidarity with the shock and outrage of that. And also Lil Bobby Hutton, who was the first Black Panther, was killed just before his 18th birthday. I had a reporter I spoke to who didn't know who Lil Bobby Hutton was. You should know who Lil Bobby Hutton was. And then there was also an insurrection at El Pueblo housing project in Pittsburgh, not too far from here on the East Bay, of mostly Black tenants. So a year later, actually at the time of what would have been the first year commemoration of some of those uprisings and some of those events, which you guys, we're in activist spaces, we like to remember what happened and we like to call attention to that. So in a way, the park, was born out of calling attention to things that happened before that. And just weeks before the park was established, Alfred Lithcomb was killed by San Francisco Police Department on March 30th, 1969. So then on 1969, hippies, street kids, Black Panthers, socialists, hippies, and people from all cross sections of the community came together to lend a hand in the creation of the park. Somewhere in these photos, and photos you can find online at People's Park Berkeley, you can see Bobby Hutton in the pictures there. So then in May, just 1 month later, of course the police are gonna kill somebody else. At 5 a.m., May 15th, 1969, hundreds of California Highway Patrol and Berkeley Police Department officers invaded People's Park unannounced. By noon, a rally on Sproul, led by the New Left Forum, intended to address the quote-unquote Middle East crisis, which included the occupation of Palestine. It pivoted in the second half to address People's Park when the ASUC president, then Dan Siegel, exclaimed, "Let's go down and take the park." Thousands of people flooded Telegraph Avenue toward the park. 800 CHP officers, scared of the crowd, reacted violently. People were beaten, tear gassed, shot at indiscriminately. Hundreds were arrested, one man was blinded, and one bystander, James Rector, was killed by police who shot him with a quote-unquote less than lethal round. Always beware of that language, those lies of less than lethal. The police are always lethal. National Guard occupation. Then Governor Ronald Reagan used this as a chance to start his infamy. To demonstrate his ability to use the strong arm of the law in the face of civil disobedience, he ordered the National Guardsmen into the area where they occupied the city for multiple weeks, as they have done again this year, multiple times, under Gavin Newsom, who also co-signed that SCOTUS MAGA ruling against all kinds of encampments. Let me skip ahead. At a vigil for James Rector, May 20th, they kettled people on Sproul. They dropped tear gas from a helicopter, as seen in this picture. In 1984, the park was declared a historical landmark. That's kind of just of note that, even though that's the case, officially, they're still destroying it. On 1991, they tried to take back the People's Park from the unhoused people by saying that they wanted to put volleyball courts there. 8 police departments were called in to ensure construction, again, as they were this year. Demonstrators linked arms. Dozens, if not hundreds, were injured by the police as they fired again less than lethal rounds into the crowd. Just this week we had the anniversary, I guess it's 32 years, of the police killing Rosebud, who came into the campus at the chancellor's office saying, with a piece of paper saying, "We are willing to die for this piece of land, are you?" She was killed by Oakland Police Department, if I'm not mistaken, and actually the officer who killed her is still a police officer, as is his son, actively in the Bay Area. So again, this is stuff they don't really want us to know, that we're literally fighting the same struggle. So as our ancestors, as people, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years ago. It continues to exist in Berkeley with very loaded question marks. Yeah, this is about Rosebud. And again, that's kind of, learning about Rosebud is also what kind of inspired me to do some independent research into the other police killings that had taken place before the park was officially founded. Because there are actually a lot of ancestors who are our martyrs who are related to this land, this particular land, and then of course the university itself. itself, and then of course Turtle Island. The chainsaw that they used to liberate the park in the 90s is at the Long Haul Info Shop on Shattuck Ave. I definitely recommend you check it out. In 2018, Chancellor Carol Christ announced the UC once again intended to retake the park. That's obviously sort of been her legacy to do that. The first round of deforestation started then. I'm trying to kind of skip ahead because I know I only have 5 minutes. I want to make sure that there's like any questions and just to make sure I get through most of the slides. Yeah, this was really cool taking back of the park actually at first. Like there were a lot of students and like even whole classrooms that were involved in like coming to say let's get rid of these fences and let's bring them over to Sproul. Yeah, and Michael Delacour, rest in peace. He, noted at the occupation that there were enough people to take the fences, and so they spontaneously did that. In August 2022, some of you were here then. Berkeley came again for the park unannounced overnight, erecting fences, arresting protesters, and chainsaws cut down more than 47 trees. People tore up in the fences and attempted to rush in. Multiple women were tackled, arrested, and the crowd was beaten back by hundreds of riot cops with batons. Eventually, the police retreated as the fence were torn down once again. So yeah, and then this is, okay, yeah, perfect. And then this year, in their most recent police raid, 1,014 police and private security guards raided People's Park at midnight on January 4th, 2024. A SWAT team tore into the kitchen and people in the park were arrested at random. Police closed down a 6-block area of Southside, including where I live with my child, who has now lived through like, I don't know, at least like a handful of police raids. I mean, it doesn't really make sense. It's not the kind of thing that you move and pay buku dollars to like try to stay in Berkeley to experience. Instituting illegal ID checks, yeah, that was sickening. In the midst of the genocide, mind you. Thank you. The UC built a 17-foot border wall around the park with shipping containers, which are similar to the containers that they use for the border wall with Mexico and also in Palestine. They have plans to keep this. They plan to keep this wall up until at least May of 2027. I'm not sure if this is in the slide, but we have a website that you should all visit if you haven't already, and just go ahead and do it again for me. tinyurl.com/removethewallberkeley. I should have put that in a slide, but it's tinyurl. Thank you. .com/removethewallberkeley, because we're trying to get them to remove not only the wall, but they have 24/7 Apex security guards. You will notice guarding the wall, which really makes us unsafe, and it makes us feel unsafe. It disrupts our community. It occupies the sidewalks, and they aren't supposed to be there till 2027. And then, of course, they said this whole time since August of 2022, that they were not going to cut down the tallest redwood tree, which was 150 years old minimum. And this summer, behind while she was arrested and behind bars for nothing she did wrong, supporting an ecosystem for over a century, they cut that tree down. So yeah, the tree is down, but we can plant again. Some of those trees were planted by the Black Panthers. Fun fact. Yay! It's in there. Good job, team. And yeah, come out to harm reduction if you want to talk more about that. Meet some of the other community members every single Saturday from approximately 12 to 2. We